What if awakening is not what you imagine? Not light, not serenity, not certainty, but dread, silence, paradox? By the end of this video, you will see why Kierkegaard believed awakening begins in crisis, and why only in trembling lies the seed of freedom. Most of us picture awakening as arrival, a place of peace, a state where questions vanish and the heart finally rests. But Kierkegaard, the 19th century philosopher often called the father of existentialism, saw something very different. Awakening is not arrival, it is trembling. He looked at the world around him, a society certain of its truths, confident in its morals, comfortable in its routines, and yet hollow beneath the surface. For Kierkegaard, the crowd was a mask. People hid inside borrowed beliefs, safe in conventions, repeating what had been handed down. But beneath it all, each person carried despair, anxiety, the dizziness of freedom. In his book, The Concept of Anxiety, Kierkegaard writes, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. This was not a sickness to be cured. It was the signal of awakening, to stand on the edge of possibility, to look into the abyss of choice, to feel the vertigo of freedom itself. Awakening is not arrival, it is trembling." But perhaps his most famous work, Fear and Trembling, reveals this truth most vividly. Kierkegaard retells the story of Abraham, commanded by God to sacrifice his son Isaac. To reason, the act is madness. To ethics, it is murder. And yet Abraham rises in the morning. He saddles his donkey, and he walks toward the mountain. Why? Because for Kierkegaard, true faith, true awakening means stepping beyond rules, beyond calculation, into the paradox of trust in the absurd. Abraham becomes what Kierkegaard calls the knight of faith, not because he understood, not because he found peace in logic, but because he leapt where reason refused to follow. This is why awakening for Kierkegaard is not comfort. It is confrontation, the collapse of borrowed certainties, the loneliness of standing as an individual before the infinite. He saw despair not as a mistake, but as the unavoidable condition of every human being. We long for solid ground. But sooner or later, the ground gives way. And in that collapse, we face a choice: retreat into distraction, or step into the unknown. Awakening, then, is not a gentle dawn. It is a trembling night, a shaking of the soul, a demand to leap where reason cannot go. Awakening is not arrival. It is trembling, and so we are left with the paradox. If awakening begins in crisis, if it is trembling, not peace, how do we move forward? What kind of leap could carry us across the abyss? That is where Kierkegaard takes us next. If awakening begins in trembling, it leads to the leap. Not a step, not a climb, a leap. By the end of this section, you will see why Kierkegaard believed only the leap brings freedom and why no explanation, no doctrine can take its place. Think again of Abraham, knife in hand, son by his side. The command makes no sense. To reason, it is madness. To morality, it is crime. And yet Abraham walks forward. Kierkegaard calls this the teleological suspension of the ethical, a moment when rules fall silent, when reason cannot guide, when the individual stands alone before the infinite. Abraham is not praised for understanding. He is praised for leaping, beyond reason, beyond certainty, into trust in what he called the absurd, not doctrines, not rituals. Faith is the trembling leap. Without guarantees, without proof, awakening is not arrival, it is trembling. But maybe you fear this idea. Maybe you ask, if I abandon certainty, won't I lose myself? If I leap, what if I fall into nothing? What if there is no God, no meaning, only silence? This is the fear Kierkegaard forces us to face. He does not soften it. He does not erase the abyss. He leaves it wide open. And yet, he insists the leap is still possible. The leap is not irrational. It is super-rational, not against reason, beyond it. Like a swimmer leaping from the cliff, trusting the water unseen below. Think of your own life. The moments that defined you were not the safe, calculated ones. They were the leaps: quitting the job, saying, "I love you," walking away from the familiar. Each time, reason measured risks. But something deeper pushed you forward. Close your eyes if you can. Take one slow breath. Inhale, hold, exhale. Now remember the last time you stood at the edge of possibility. That vertigo in your chest. That silence before the step. That trembling was not weakness. It was freedom calling you. Awakening is not arrival, it is trembling. And yet the fear returns. What if I leap and the ground is not there? What if I leap and all I meet is silence? Kierkegaard answers, the silence is the test. Only in risking nothing can you gain nothing. Only in risking everything can you discover faith. The leap is not safe. It was never meant to be. It is the edge where reason ends and freedom begins. Awakening is not arrival. It is trembling. Trembling that leads to the leap. But what happens after the leap? What transformation follows when one dares to trust the absurd? That is where Kierkegaard takes us next. What happens after the leap? After the trembling? After the abyss is crossed? Kierkegaard insists, the leap is not the end. It is the beginning. Most people imagine awakening as arrival, a safe harbor, a steady light. But for Kierkegaard, awakening does not remove struggle, it transfigures it. Faith, he says, is not certainty. It is holding paradox in your hands, believing in what cannot be proved, trusting the eternal in the middle of the finite. Awakening is not arrival, it is trembling. And here lies the hardest truth. Awakening does not dissolve anxiety, it baptizes it. Anxiety becomes teacher, fear becomes passage. Trembling becomes doorway to freedom. Before the leap, dread paralyzes. It feels like standing at the edge of a cliff, heart pounding, knees weak, unable to move. But after the leap, dread becomes possibility. It is no longer an enemy. It is the energy that reminds you of freedom. Kierkegaard calls this the dizziness of freedom, the strange vertigo of realizing you are not bound to necessity. You could live otherwise, you could become otherwise. And that truth terrifies as much as it liberates. Awakening is not arrival. It is trembling. But maybe you still object. What about real suffering? Losing a child, betrayal from the one you trusted most, injustice that tears a community apart. Kierkegaard does not promise escape from pain. He does not deny the wound. Instead, he points to faith as strange strength. Faith does not cancel grief. It lets grief be felt without despair. In heartbreak, the impulse is collapse. In betrayal, the impulse is hardness. In injustice, the impulse is hate. But faith whispers, you can choose differently. Not because you control the spark, but because you decide what it becomes. Awakening is not arrival. It is trembling. Look at the culture around us, every notification, every scroll, every alert. The average person touches their phone more than 2,000 times a day. Each tap, another spark. Each scroll, another impulse, almost none resisted. We call it progress, but Kierkegaard would call it sleepwalking. Living by sparks, never choosing which fire to light. Awakening does not mean never trembling. It means choosing and trembling how to live. Awakening is not arrival, it is trembling. This is why Kierkegaard called faith a paradox. It is not victory over fear. It is standing in fear and still leaping. It is not clarity that erases questions. It is courage that lives with them. This is freedom. The kind no empire can give. The kind no loss can take away. The kind no silence can erase. Awakening is not arrival. It is trembling. In trembling, the leap is born. In the leap, the self is reborn. And in that rebirth, freedom begins. At the start, I asked, what if awakening is not what you imagine? Now you know, it was never comfort. It was never certainty. It was always trembling. Awakening is not arrival, it is trembling. And in trembling lies the seed of freedom. So pause, breathe, and if this spoke to you, write in the comments, I choose the leap. Let it be your reminder. Let it be our practice. Let's see how many leap together.